I'm thrilled to be here, but a bit nervous because I'm talking about my own artwork. So it's always a bit different talking about your own stuff somehow. But because I did the last year's talk with Nick about history and power also in Saban with the circular economy, I'm quite excited about today's sharing, because all the stuff I talked about last time is what gets under my collar and triggers me all the time. And in many ways, all that history that we live through every day, history always all at once, is what makes me be an artist in a way to try and address our history. I have to go to our region. I'm starting with a map. Can you see what the map is? This is the Southeast Asia region. It's a bit washed out in this room here, but this is a map of the oceans of Southeast Asia. So we have, can you see in the middle there, that's the island of Borneo. That's the top of Australia there. That's the Horn of Africa. The Arab world, India, Japan, and China. And then we just catch a little bit up towards China. Michael's up in Canada here. And we just catch a bit of Mexico and South America, Easter Island, a little bit of New Zealand, and this massive Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean. But this map is made using Google satellite imagery, making a composite that's printed on silk, and then I've taken it through the batik process. And batik, to me, is a really interesting medium because it has entered the realm of it's a powerful medium in Malaysia because politicians and leaders wear batik as a kind of nationalistic uniform. So, and batik, historically, throughout this entire region, including outside of Southeast Asia, batik was predominantly made by women. So I begin the talk with a recognition of our mediums in art, historically, which is batik, made predominantly by women, and a look at our geography. So the other thing about batik is it's wax and resist. Where the wax lies, it resists influence. When you crack it, that's where the dye, this is indigo dye. This is Japanese indigo dye on Chinese silk. So what the indigo falls in the cracks, and that's where influence happens. So this is a map about influence and about exchange across the region. And a lot of the time when we talk about our history, the nation state, our communities, we talk about lived spaces as being on land. But I wanted to start by remembering that us as Southeast Asians have this massive, massive influence. Our highway to the universe was via the oceans. So this is a map about our corridor regions. And when you think about the corridor regions, they're not empty sites at all, but they're extremely busy highways. And these highways are of influence and knowledge and learning and exchange and all the rest of it, languages. So this is our no-time map of our region, of how much we get influenced by others, how much we wax and resist, how much we don't allow the dye into the waxed areas, so it's resistance, and then the dye falls in the cracks where we allow influence. And there's this constant osmosis that happens within the corridors of our region. So just to locate our geography as being powerful. Our geography is powerful because our geography encourages osmosis, it encourages exchange, it encourages trade. And if we allow that to happen, and resistance, we hold back as well, the wax of the batik, where it doesn't allow influence, there's a combination, there's this really dynamic dance. And to me, that's what batik crackle, which is this spider webby thing, it's like an energy. And that to me, the energy of our historic medium of batik made by women is such a poetic way for us to start addressing what our local art mediums, our local bahan, the stuff that we express, what we use in our expression, how we express ourselves. So I want to recognize how powerful our geography is in terms of connecting empires of the world, regions of the world. They met via us. We influence them as well. So we come from the corridor of the universe. I call Borneo the heart of the world. I'm deeply prejudiced, but we are the heart of the world because we're on the equator. The lungs to me are the Congo and the Amazon, and we're the heart. I have the privilege of saying that it's a heart because I said so. That's my power. I'm claiming that. But we're also that we make weather on the equator, and we're on the corridor. We're the connectors. That is very powerful, how we connect. So I'm also going to claim power by saying that us in Borneo, be it in Kalimantan, Indonesian Borneo, we invented art. It's an audacious statement, but we're talking about power, and I want to claim it. So just now we had sea people. Now we look at land people. 40,000 years ago, perhaps even longer, 50-something in the carbon dating, the oldest figurative painting on our planet came from our island. How incredible is that? And the image that was depicted was our kerbau.
Water buffalo.
Now we have issues in our community with water buffaloes, right? So I want to acknowledge the buffalo as being a really, really powerful part of our human existence and our existence within our communities. It was so important that the first piece of figurative art in the world was a buffalo. How significant is that? What power does this animal have in its relationship with human communities, with us, right? And the people that lived on our island in Borneo, it's us. And I love to say that we invented art because so much of when we talk about culture and we talk about what ends up in museums and who are the big, powerful artists, it's always somewhere in the north. It's the Louvre Museum in Paris. It's all of that. But we invented art, and I want us to claim that. We are great storytellers. And when we have this storytelling and we have art, we have tremendous power to communicate. That is power. So often we give power to the politicians and to the leaders without recognizing how diverse power is. Power is like money. It's just a thing that you give it its description. You describe power. You give power. You give money power. You describe the nature of money by how money is used, for instance. So I just wanted to start with this world of this osmosis world of the busy corridor of exchange, and that we invented art. So we come from a very powerful region, and we invented art, so we're damn powerful on the island of Borneo. So all of us, and we need to claim that, I think. So then we go to another kind of power. This was part of the same series, and it's called the Orang Besar series, meaning the big people series. This was made in 2010, and I was trying to understand our political structures, political power. I was trying to understand historically, this happens in no country, and it happens in the region, in what is now nation states. But the history that I'm looking at is regional. It's the island, Southeast Asia. I'm outside of Sabah. I'm in Indonesia. I'm in the Philippines. I'm in the region, yeah? So I'm in our geography. What was where did our political structures, what did a powerful man look like? And I'm telling this story with the medium of batik, the medium that was made by women. Yeah, this is called Orang Besar series, kain panjang with parasitic kepala. So just now, I just touched briefly that a lot of our politicians and our leaders wear batik shirts as a kind of uniform. Dulu, kain panjang, there's two types of kain. There's kain sarung and there's kain panjang. Even the way we wear our sarung describes power. So a sarung is a shorter piece of cloth that's wrapped around you like a skirt, right? Men and women both wear it. The working class wore the sarung because it is short. It allows you to spread your legs. It allows you to cangkul the land. It allows you to work when you're wearing the sarung. The kain panjang is a much larger dimension, longer dimension, and it is worn tightly around your body so that your legs, you make small steps. Because your kain panjang, you come from the elite. You don't work in the fields. You don't need to have the flexibility of your uniform, right? You're wearing a cloth that's tightly around your body so that because you don't need to work the fields. So this series is called the Kain Panjang series. And immediately the intention is that if we read our clothing, that historically, our traditional clothing, what can they tell us about how we describe power? So the elite people wore cloth that was tightly round the kain panjang, because they don't need to work in the fields. So even that describes a certain kind of power. And it has a kepala on it. But an orang besar, a big person, what we would nowadays we call our politicians orang besar. How do you describe the wealth of a man historically? Where does it come from? How do you describe wealth, which equals power, right? So historically, the wealth of a man, and it was a man, was not measured by how many ships he had, or how much land he had, or how many kerbau he had. The wealth of a man was measured by how many people he had, how many people he was responsible for, or how many people held him up. Because when you had wealth of people, you had a workforce, you had an army, and you had a support network that would uplift you. So in this series, I'm trying to describe our body politic, or where it comes from. And I also have to say that although I'm drawing from our history, and I'm very interested in our history because our history tells us about our contemporary day, what can we learn about our political body politic from before to describe today? And to me, it was enlightening for me. So an orang besar needs to have people to be an orang besar. In the adat of the sultanates around Southeast Asia, how do you become a sultan? You become a sultan when a mass of people call you, they daulat tuanku, and they call you sultan. When they don't daulat tuanku, when they don't call you sultan, you're no longer sultan. It is the people that will give the power for a sultan to be a sultan. If they don't want the sultan anymore, they don't daulat tuanku. A case in point for Sabah is the Sulu Sultanate. If you want the Sulu Sultanate, all you have to do is daulat tuanku and say, I recognize you as my sultan. If you don't want the Sulu Sultanate, all Sabah has to do is say, we don't recognize you. That's all Sabah has to do in the adat of what a sultanate is, right? In the historically. So in this particular image, I pair it with a plant from the natural world. In this case, apa you panggil? Alamak. Banyan tree. Yeah, which has aerial root structures, and other plants will live on it, and it has this reciprocal relationship with sustenance and all of that. And it's kind of how I feel. This is the orang besar in modern day clothing, because I'm describing modern day but I'm using history to describe this, where the people will hold up the sultan. And it's the people that are responsible for making the sultan sit at the top with an umbrella. This one is a golfing umbrella, but dulu is a yellow sultan umbrella. And then the sultan, there's your picture plant. The sultan is responsible to care for the well-being of those people. So it's a reciprocal relationship. Here, the orang besar has to hold up this is with a mimosa plant. If you touch it, it closes. Here, the orang besar holds up the orang kecil. Can you all see? Yeah. So do you see the shape of this kind of body politic emerging of where the big person is held up by the small people and the small people are cared for by the big person? So imagine that now, just twist that in terms of a CEO or a political party in today's Sabah, where in order for me to have power, I need to gather people that will give me power and will support me. I need to have my gang, right? When I get my gang, I need to make sure that every one of that gang is looked after. They all get a piece of the power pie, right? Think how that encourages either positive or negative kind of nepotistic relationships, or a tribute system, or this relationship between the symbol of power and this mass of people. And I think in terms of our corruption, if we look at 1MDB, when we know that somebody is corrupt, or when we see that somebody is corrupt, what often happens is that people gather towards that corruption because they're gathering towards what they see as a money source, or they want the handouts that come from that, right? So to me, just looking at these old power structures that used to be about people to toll the rivers, to work the land, kind of describes in a way how our politicians work by gathering people, by paying those small amounts of money. And when we look at what our Southeast Asian notions of slavery are, it's very different from notions of what slavery is in the global north. Even in terms of Islam, slavery is the Abdullah, servant of God. It's an honor. Hamba Sultan, the slave, Hamba cannot be described. The direct translation is slave, but it does not mean slave when you say Hamba Sultan. It means that you serve the Sultan. The Sultan will also serve you. So to understand our description of slavery or dependency and this reciprocal relationship to that center of power becomes really enlightening, I think, when you're recognizing why people are drawn to something that you know is corrupted, but why? Why do they do that? What is that reciprocal Hamba Sultan relationship? So looking at our language, Abdullah, servant of God, Hamba Sultan, it's deeply embedded within our linguistics and our language, our relationship with forces and power. So just to recognize that, to see it. So a lot of power, I think, is embedded in seeing the matrix, if you like. This one, again, I'm in Southeast Asia. Malaysian border is 59 years old. We're 60 next year. I'm talking about a millennia or two of political power, right? So how can I just talk about Sabah? How can I just talk about Malaysia? I have to talk about the region. Our borders are very, very, very new and fresh, right? So this goes back to that fluid world image, the first map. These are islands of cloth. Cloth, whether it's cotton or silk, became trade items. Forms of capitalism, if you like, of exchange, as part of that osmosis that happens with the batik crackle between the wax and the crack. We also have material exchange, literal textiles or other goods. And then you kind of see these ships. These are what I call the entropods. These are your little gangs of power that control this port, this area, you know, it's Malacca or wherever, right? The title of this work is Empires of Privateers and Their Glorious Ventures. My titles are a bit ridiculous. This was all for a solo exhibition of mine called Boogeyman. Boogeyman, the word, I love language and words and how words unpack kind of what people are thinking. So the word boogeyman is said to come from the Bugis man. The Bugis, the seafarers of Sulawesi, of the Riau archipelago, the Bugis man, who are famous seafarers. I'm going to sidetrack here because this is what I do, but also because it's so interesting when we talk about power and language. Language to me is power. It's so much about power embedded in language. The Bugis man from Sulawesi are famous for their navigational maps. So we also always talk about how Southeast Asia doesn't have written language, but we do. The Bugis had navigational maps. I've seen them at the British Library. Beautiful maps with symbols of the stars and for navigating and traversing these corridor regions of the oceans, right? So their written language was all about navigation and about traveling the oceans. It's about the stars. There's another form of written language was in Sumatra amongst the Batak, and their written language was about agriculture, and it was calendars. When to plant the paddy, when to harvest the paddy. So their emphasis was on agriculture because they were land-based people. And then I can't for the life of me remember, but it's Anthony Reid's book, Commerce something, 1400 to something rather. And he talks about the origins of the Malay pantun. The pantun, the poem, comes from the language of love. It's to nak cari suami, nak cari istri. So if you want to find love, you want to find a mate, you want to find a partner, you would write one line on this leaf. I can't remember what the leaf was. And then you'd fold it and Natasha. And then Natasha would write back one line and balas balik, this pantun, right? And then, so in order for you to find love, in order for you to find your mate, you had to, it wasn't a language about, it wasn't written text about the power to get your mate was in learning how to write poem in order to find love. And I just thought, wow, that's so powerful. That is incredible. A poet will have that power of love, you know? So I mean, to me, already those three indigenous languages describe power. Power over the stars and navigation, over land and agriculture, and over love. I mean, that's incredible. Another form of power, if we understand different forms of power. Another thing about okay, so I said the Bugis man, because the Bugis man, it became the Bugis man, the seafarer from the Southeast Asian archipelago. What they used to do was that was their seas. This is their territory, their entrepôts. They control this waterway. This is my territory, right? I charge toll. You have to pay me, right? Because you're my waters. And then you get the colonizers come in, right? They're not paying due. They're not paying their toll. So this Bugis man would jump the colonial ship and rob the ship because they didn't pay toll. They didn't follow the Orang Besar rules, right? So perfectly logical, right? So the colonizer, the British person would say, oh, that's the boogeyman, the Bugis man. And that's supposedly, I don't know if it's entirely true, but I like the idea of it. The Bugis man became the boogeyman that jumped the ship.
The origin of the term in Victorian England was, you know how here you tell stories about ghosts to children and to frighten them. Yeah. You know, so they would tell the story that because the boogeyman would appear from nowhere.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the boogeyman will get you.
Yes.
How you make children frightened.
Yeah.
You know, in Victorian England. That's where the origin.
It comes from the Bugis
It
man.
comes from the Bugis man because you would read in from the point of view of Imperial Britain, you would read about the Bugis attack, you know, taking over these ships coming from nowhere, apparently without power but able to have power. So it was then turned into frightening children.
Yes. And in the title here, you see empires of privateers. So all these sultans, all these orang besar are kind of privateers to their sultan. What does privateer mean? Maybe Ken, can you give a proper definition of a privateer?
So the state claims to have a monopoly of violence, right? According to governments, they're the only ones allowed to be violent. They're the only ones allowed to make laws. So a privateer is somebody who privately believes that they can also deploy violence and law to their own benefit, just like a state can. So a privateer was the origin of this idea of the pirate, which is somebody who thinks that it's not true that only states should have or do have a monopoly on the use of violence for economic and political purposes.
So a lot of those ships from the colonial ships, the trading ships that came through our region were privateers for their governments back home. Whether it was Spain or Portugal or England, they were privateers for the centers of power. They would make business and money in collaboration with sort of official power. But then, so did the Southeast Asian. They were also privateers for their sultans. They were assigned certain pathways. But then the privateer would call that person a pirate because that person was entering my zone. So then you have this really interesting play between the privateer and the pirate. Who is the privateer? Who is the pirate? So in nowadays, in the lingo that we use now, your terrorist is my freedom fighter. Right? Do you see the difference? Like somebody would, if we go to Russia, Ukraine, the Ukraine wanting to align with Russia would say that Russia is their freedom fighter. Ukraine will call them the terrorists or something like that, I don't know enough to use that as an example. But so I really like those notions as well to understand perspective on where you are coming from. Whether someone is your privateer or whether someone is your pirate or whether they're the terrorist or whether they're a freedom fighter. It's just a matter of which side you're on, which perspective you're taking, which is very linked also with power. Or this, you can't see it so well. At the bottom and top of this image is all skull and crossbones. So also why pirates have become so romanticized as freedom fighters against the power, against the man, right? So those are really interesting. Why do we feel that way about a pirate? That's standing up against power, even though they're robbing and killing people. So I find that really interesting parallel to look at. I added in my Kerbau works just to continue the buffalo thread. This is called A Rousing Account of Migration in the Language of the Sea. Because the tanah dan air. So we are Kerbau. The Kerbau, the first depiction of figurative art in the world was a water buffalo that came from the lands of Southeast Asia, right? And then we come in this region that is a corridor region of fluidity and movement. There is no orang asal in the sense that there is no asal. We come from a region of extreme fluidity and movement. So people move. They have very, very close affinities to a land and a place, but we were naturally mobile people. We were always moving. But then what happens is that borders come in. This is called Sulu Stories. So this is 20 years ago. These are two people photographed in Pulau Bakunan Kecil in the Sulu Sea of Sundakan. It's known as the Turtle Island. I did another, why turtles are so significant to me, another kind of power. turtles, when they're born, when they're hatched on the beach, and they're hatched from their egg, and then they run to the ocean, they will swim the oceans for 20, 30 years. They have an inbuilt GPS system in their being that will bring them back to the exact same beach that they were hatched on for them to lay their next generation of eggs. So when you cut off that beach, you're displacing that GPS memory of home, of where a beach is. And I love that notion. There's another form of power of our GPS built-in system to know where home is. You can travel, but you know where home is. So this series was made on that turtle island. The woman is Malaysian, the man is stateless. But they're the same people, and they come from the same place, but by accidents of history, one is Malaysian and one is not. And on his back, her hair makes a map. And this, I don't know if you can see, that's a map of Sabah. There's Palawan, there's Mindanao, and the Tawi-Tawi chain of islands. Our border is 59 years old. We have our people, our families, the communities, the adats, the knowledge, that exchange in our oceans is a millennia old. And we're making judgment on people based on 59 years. I don't understand it. So suddenly on that beautiful fluid world of exchange, of osmosis, we put a fence and a border, right? How do you put a border on genetic memory? That I symbolize here using hair, that of somebody is now given an identity of belonging to a nation state, and somebody does not have paper identity. They don't, in a way, in this contemporary world, they don't exist because they don't have paper identity, but they have cultural identity. They have genetic memory built into their system, into their being, into their DNA, right? So now, that's why to me it's important to remember the big map of our region. I don't go so far into the rest. I'm focusing on us, the island Southeast Asia, not even the mainland of Indochine countries, but island Southeast Asia. We are fluid. The sea is our ocean, is our corridor, right? How do you border that? How do you border the ocean, our corridors? What do you block when you block the corridor? What are you cutting off when you stop the information or trade or culture flow? You know, our very special superpower is immediately reduced because our superpower is our fluidity, in my mind. So then we have the border, the nation state. 59 years ago, we have Malaysia. West Malaysia, Semenanjung, which I call the coccyx of the Asian continent, because you have the Asian continent, and then you have this little bit here, there's the Malay Peninsula. I call it the coccyx, like the bottom of your, kurang ajar. So these are using archival photographs. Archives are libraries of power, keepers of knowledge, of describing what power looked like at any given time to the power of that time. So nobody in the history of our country made proper Malaysia Day plates to commemorate the formation of Malaysia. So I was really annoyed me. There's a Malaysia Day enamel mug. It's white with a blue rim and it says Malaysia Day 1963, right? There's one with Tunku Abdul Rahman. No, not doing, we don't have it. There's only Tunku Abdul Rahman's Malaya plate. We don't have a Malaysia Day plate. So I wanted to change this. So I was, who has the power to describe the important moments in our country's history? Who does that? Like, what is our kitsch? What is our object to like a flag or something to show an important moment? So it's Royal Selangor Putan Ma. Royal Selangor Pewter made, which is it's like 100 years old, or maybe not quite. It's older than Malaysia, the company, making pewter souvenirs, right? So they have a Malaya Merdeka Day plate. They never had a Malaysia Day one. They have the badminton Thomas Cup. They have the man landing on the moon. They have, you name it, they have it. They have the Grand Prix when it was in KL. They got all these commemorative plates made across Malaysia's history, but they don't have a plate for Malaysia. So I thought I have to change. This was in 2010. Same exhibition, the My Boogeyman exhibition in KL. I said, I'm going to make a Malaysia Day. I'm going to infiltrate the system. I'm going to go via Royal Selangor Pewter. The idea was that it would end up in every shop in the country. I wanted to infiltrate. That is my least laku work ever. They did not sell. So, and I'm going to make them kitsch, because that's mass. Kitsch to me means mass understanding. I'm really into language. So kitsch, I love kitsch, and I love notions of kitsch. Milan Kundra's The Unbearable Lightness of Being, fantastic book to understand political kitsch, how to use political language to move a mass of people into an action, right? So I was trying to exercise this notion of political kitsch that everybody understands to make into the realm of the souvenir shop. But no, I wasn't going to make one plate, of course not. 4 signatory territories of Malaysia. So Tunku Abdul Rahman, Donald Stevens, Stephen Kalong Ningkan, Lee Kuan Yew, the 4 signatory territories of Malaysia. They're made in this style because I was following the style of Royal Selangor, infiltrating their aesthetics. All 4 mats are built, though, on the basis of a Mengkuang mat. So inside the mat at the base, you'll see a mat. I don't have any of the Tunku Abdul Rahman Merdeka Day salute. None of that patriarchal macho behavior. As per archival photographs from the archives, they're all reading the Proclamation of Malaysia. Tunku Abdul Rahman happened to be the only one in official archive images, I didn't change nothing, to be facing the other way. So when you read an image, and I'm like shock sendiri, I'm laughing, right? If you take your time to look, the answers are right in front of you. He's looking the other way. Everyone else is looking that way. So anyway, that's my attempt at infiltrating the souvenir, the kitsch, the power of kitsch, political kitsch. Okay, some of you know my sister Yee-Lann. This is Yee-Lann. This is made in 2007. This is Kinabalu series, and this is my tribute to Hominodun, the daughter of the Kerajaan Dusun Morot Rongos Kinoringan. I talked about this in that last sharing that we had, and her relationship with land and fertility, agriculture, saving the community via land and plants. Her power was her fertility and her love of community and her willingness to sacrifice herself, which always felt a bit wrong to me. Why did she have to die just to be power? Why does she get power by dying, you know? So I've done something that some people would not like, is that I've made her pregnant. But to me, it is not a birth pregnancy. It's a pregnancy of fertility, of the symbolism of the power of pregnancy and the power of fertility, the power that comes from the female body, if you like. And also the power of agriculture and rice, something alongside the buffalo so important to our land communities. Mount Kinabalu on the horizon line. It's called the Kinabalu series. It's a triptych of 3. The next image, the mountain is still there, but hidden by clouds. Same spot. That's my grandmother. That's me as a baby. That's my mom with her Air New Zealand bag. These are my aunties from Kampung Nambazan and Pinampang, the Bobohizans. That's my dad, the civil servant. He's reading the New Straits Times newspaper with an article that really had the number 7, which is a power number in Kadazan ritual. And it was an article by, I got a picture of it. It's an article by the Sultan of Perak, Raja Nazrin Shah. And it says, Malaysians of all races, religions, and geographic locations need to believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that they have a place under the Malaysian sun. And then he lists seven reasons why you need to believe you have a place under the Malaysian sun. And this is from the Sultan of Perak, right? And it took the number 7. 7 being the ritual number in the land people of Sabah. 7 limes, 7 buffalo, 7 everything, right? So I just thought that that was such a, and the New Straits Times is a direct, it's news, everything is about power, everything. So the newspaper, New Straits Times, which comes out of KL, is the rebirth of the Straits Times. It was birthed in 1965 when Singapore left the Federation of Malaysia. Singapore took the Straits Times. What was left in KL was the New Straits Times, right? 1965 was, in a way, the end of the Malaysia dream because Singapore left, right? So if we look at our media, how does media track the nation state, right? Or describe power, information? When I was living in KL for 20-something years, I never read a newspaper that came from Sabah or Sarawak. By directive, they're not sent to KL. KL people or West Malaysia do not read Bornean news. West Malaysian newspapers used to be delivered to Sabah and Sarawak, but never the other way. You would know no Bornean newspaper in West Malaysia. The internet changed that. So now they didn't read about us. They didn't learn. Those poor people had no idea about who we are, right? They only knew what they were told via portals such as the Straits Times. And then the third in the triptych, Mount Kinabalu is still there. Does anyone know what these buildings are? This is Putrajaya. This is the boulevard of Putrajaya, the federal capital, administrative capital imposed on the Tanah of Sabah. Our jungles and our agriculture, in the second image, Hominodun's hair of the first image has now been buried. The land has been dug up and scarred. The oil palm comes in. There's no more paddy fields. And then, now the boulevard of Putrajaya, which ironically boasts indigenous patterns in its boulevard, covers the earth. On the left is the Ministry of Finance. At the end is the International Convention Center of Putrajaya. It's about business and capitalism, surrounded by the oil palm sawit that feeds this machine. In the poster here is KLCC, that the money comes from Sabah Oil and Gas, right? That's me. This is a self-portrait. I am the buffalo. I am arguing back. That is my power. I have 40,000 years old. I invented art. I am the buffalo. Are you following the thread of power? Of why the buffalo? Why I want to claim the buffalo? What power looks like? How it can cover the land, cover the storytelling. A lot of you work with smallholders, with oil palm, and it's a really complex scenario. A lot of you also work with animals, conservation that way, right? So, but what always happens is that the environmentalists will talk about the orangutans, the sawit smallholders will talk about their children, education, the rest very valid. You know what nobody ever talks about? To do with oil palm? Before the land became oil palm, it was paddy, it was fruit orchards, it was kampungs, it was diversity. When oil palm comes in as a monocrop, as a single crop that blankets, you stand up at the ridge at Kinabalu and you look down over Sandakan, it's valley after valley after valley of a singular plant, right? Never mind the orangutans for a moment. What else is it covering up? It's covering up the role of women in society. Women don't have the same role in sawit as they did in agriculture. So women lose their storytelling. Women lose their agricultural role. Women plant the paddy. Women harvest the paddy. Women look after the spiritual well-being of the paddy. Women sell the paddy in the marketplace. No more role. So nobody talks about how sawit changes the role of women in our communities. Their power that they've always had is diminished. Their storytelling, their involvement, their intrinsic goddess status is just... So the woman in the buffalo in the sawit, actually they got jobs in the sawit. They do have jobs. But the women, they lost their job in the paddy field. Women also lost their job, their role, spiritual, physical, economic. And it's something that I wish people would talk about more and in relation to oil palm. Okay, this is Horizon series, very early work from 2003. Oh, Sulu Stories was 2005, sorry, not 2003. Horizon series, this goes back 20 years. I've been obsessed by the same things. In Sabah, you want to understand power, you want to think, you want to philosophize, you want to use your mind, intellectualize. What is power, right? In order to do that, I kind of feel you need to look at our horizon line and to have clarity in how you see or what you're seeing. Like, what do you see when you look? What is it? They are trying to understand what you're looking at, trying to understand, right? To me, I was in the Australian desert and looking at this horizon line, and I came to realize that so often I couldn't see because something was plonked in front of my vision, blocking my view. In Sabah, it was Mount Kinabalu. Mount Kinabalu blocks my horizon line. What does that mean? It means that I'm influenced by that mountain. That mountain gets in the way, if you like. It makes me look at it and go, remember my Sabah. It's still blocking. I'm still stuck at this place. I can't get out of Sabah. It's blocked by this mountain. But it is this one here. Can you tell what they are? It's KLCC. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. The piece is called fencing. So what is blocking our seeing and our view and our ability to think are these props that are placed in front of our vision to make us feel well-being. They're folks. They're blocking the horizon line. They're blocking thinking and vision. They're your safety net. They're corralling you in so you don't think too far. So something like KLCC, so proud, 1990s, tallest building in the world, tiger economy, we're doing so well, great country, Mahathir the Great built KLCC. Here, I give you the symbol of all our success so that it blocks you looking too far. And to me, that's the horizon, why we need to always try and look for the horizon line, to find vision and to recognize what might be blocking our vision. I recognize that Kinabalu is one of those things that stops me letting go of my place, but I embrace that. So I still recognize that it's stopping me, though. I'm not a global artist. I am located. I know I'm here. I choose to have this mountain locate me. But that process of recognizing what it is that keeps you in a what's in front of your vision, what affects your vision, if you like. I hope that makes sense. Okay, Picturing Power is a very, very important series for me because I learned a lot about power. So this is 2013. I'm trying to understand colonialism. What is colonialism? We are so affected by colonialism in Sabah. We're still in states of being colonized. What is colonialism? How do you colonize someone? And I did a workshop in Yogyakarta in Indonesia with a photo historian friend of mine called Alexander Supatono from the Edinburgh University. And he gathered 10 of us, and we were reading old archival photographs from the colonial period to see what old photographs might tell us. So we were working with a collection from the Tropen Museum in the Netherlands at these old photographs. And after you look at thousands of images, what I kept noticing was the table. And it was a revelation for me. How do you colonize someone? Through admin. It's not the violence of a gun that is colonialism. It's the violence of administration. It's the violence of data. All of you are data collectors in capacities of your work. Data is power. So imagine here I have an army of colonial people carrying tables, not guns. What does that mean? What is the table? And the photographer, these old cameras. What is the photographer? Imagine, what is the violence of administration? The surveyor, Pan Borneo Highway. I survey the land, I make a road. It's in the language of rape. I enter the land, I open the land. When I open the land, the land will be used in positive, but also negative ways. Imagine that on a scale that happened during the colonial period. Of opening the land, of opening access to communities. The map maker, the surveyor, I'm going to find out what you have in your rivers. I'm going to tell you what is of value of your land. I'm going to tell you what your timber is, and I'm going to take your timber, I'm going to monetize it, capitalize on it, and I'm going to, all of this it's just admin, right? It's just admin. I'm going to make a map. I'm going to tell you who you are. I'm going to put myself in this position over you because I have data over you. So you're also working with communities that you collect communities' data. How does that put you, what's your power relationship with the communities that you're working with? Like in real terms. Like, are they part of the power sharing here in that data collection? Who keeps the data? Do you keep it in the office? Do they keep the data with them? Do they know the data? Education system. Sabah and Sarawak share one chapter in our school history syllabus in our entire school syllabus. We share half a chapter with the formation of Malaysia. That's how much Bornean history we get in our schools. This kind of indoctrination of learning still happens to this day. It's not just a white colonial thing. Education, what do you learn? What is of value to learn? These are people sitting at tables making decisions about who you are. They are describing you. They are describing your life. They are describing how things happen, how society is organized. It's via a table. Far more violent than a gun. A gun, I just shoot you dead. A table, your children's children are going to be affected by the table. It's intergenerational, it's inherited violence. So the power of the table, recognizing what that power looks like, who sits at the table. In feminist language, they always talk about women must be at the table. Why do people say that? Why do women must be at the table, right? So Picturing Power was this series where I was trying to picture this colonial power. This inherited genetic, that map, this genetic memory, inherited violence. The monocrop, agriculture. Before colonial, the scale of land use changed during the colonial period. The monocrop came in. This is sugarcane in Java, because I did this workshop in Java. So this was their first monocrop was sugarcane. We also had rubber, right? And then now sawit is the big one. Women's roles within landscapes when monocrops come in. This is from Horizon series again. It's called In the Palm of Putrajaya. I think it really ironic that our federal capital is built on an ex-oil palm mass of land, because again, we're like crop for a factory. If you start to think of yourself as something that's been admined as part of this, the citizenry as kind of like a monocrop, if you're equating yourself, how much diversity do we have in our thinking and our populace, or do we become like sawit, a monocrop? Same thinkers, same language, same everything, no diversity. So I started looking at women because of the sawit thing and all of that. And then I was very, very inspired by the Gawani feminist movement in Indonesia. So post-war, the colonies are starting to leave the region. Nationalism is beginning across that Southeast Asian archipelago, including in Indonesia. And in the 1950s, there was this incredible feminist movement in Indonesia called the Gawani movement. Over 1 million peasant women were part of this movement fighting for land rights, labor rights, marriage rights, inheritance rights, all kinds of things. And they were doing really well, and they were working with the Communist Party of Indonesia. And then you should look into the Gawani. But the Gawani abruptly ended. Over 1 million, 2 million members, peasant women, paddy farmers, fighting for land rights. Incredible. One of the best feminist movements on the globe ended overnight in 1965. In 1965, Sukarno was president during the Gawani movement. 1965, Suharto came to power. Am I okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I boring you by going to Indonesia?
No.
Okay, all right. No, I don't think of nation state. We need to learn from our neighbors, yeah?
Yes.
So in 1965, September, Lubang Buaya, 7 generals were killed. 7 Indonesian generals were killed, right? Suharto said that they were murdered by Gawani women, that these empowered women were killing babies, so that the rivers of Indonesia were running red with the blood of babies. This is what Suharto and gang were saying, right? That when they killed the 7 generals, not only did they kill the generals, they castrated them. They gouged their eyes out. They peeled their skin off in sexual orgies in the jungle. And it was done by the Gawani feminist movement, because that's what happens when women get political power. He turned them into kuntilanak. And in our language, Suharto turned them into Pontianak. And he used our folk stories and our ghost stories to demonize this incredible feminist movement in Indonesia called the Gawani. And interesting, the Sultan Banjarmasin, 16 something or other, talks, the name, the banana tree at the gate of that artwork comes from him. And it comes from his Hikayat Banjarmasin, amazing. And it was written by, about in another book that I took the title from, The Banana Tree at the Gate, where the Sultan in the 1600s in Banjarmasin, Borneo, was describing, don't put your banana tree at the gate because the colonial forces are coming, hide your assets. And also the Pontianak are said to live in the banana tree. This is actually modeled by Nadira. So please look up the Gawani feminist movement. Gerwani. Look up the writing of an incredible writer called Saskia Wieringa. Saskia Inga or something. So nobody ever saw the bodies of those 7 generals, yeah? And then in the 1965, and then after that, that was the trigger, that claim of power by Suharto to claim power for Sukarno triggered the bloodshed of 1965 Indonesia, where over 2 million people were killed, right? One day we have to show the act of killing documentary. It's what's his name? Oppenheimer's amazing. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So, Benedict Anderson, the writer, in the 1980s saw for the first time the autopsy report about those 7 generals. They were completely intact. They'd been shot. And somebody Google the National Monument of Indonesia, Pancasila at Lubang Buaya, is the 7 generals on a massive monument. The 7 generals that were killed became the national monument of Indonesia. And at the bottom, I didn't include it here, there's a bronze plate, very big, very long, fills the entire massive monument. There are these women with long hair, like Pontianak, dancing around the well. They supposedly threw the bodies down the well. So Indonesia, in its national monument, has the Pontianak in the monument. What does that, and to this day, Gawani is a difficult word to use in Indonesia. The feminist movement in Indonesia struggle with how to describe themselves. Despite being such a force of feminism, in some of the greatest feminist leaders of Southeast Asia come from Indonesia. But they have the kuntilanak, the monstrous woman, embedded in their national monument. What does that do to female power? How does that affect the psychology of the population? I get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, it's in your national monument that your woman is a monster. So then I go back to my friend. So all of this is like what triggers me. Like all these readings from history, all about the different forms of power, all of that. There's a lag here for the next image, so I won't talk about it till it comes up.
It's okay, you can stop. Guys online.
So I go back to the kerbau. The kerbau on the street. I made this work in 2007 in tribute to the Bersih rally that was happening in KL. The first Bersih rally was 2007. One thing that I so love and appreciate about the buffalo, that drives people crazy about the buffalo, is how they claim the street. And it causes terrible car accidents, which are terrible, and I'm not belittling that. But it's why I like the idea of the pirate. I like that the buffalo just is going to claim that street, and it's got a nice spot. It's going to sit there and take its sweet time, right? So I kind of felt the same way about that desire for a stubbornness to reclaim our streets. When we started this, when street rallies and protests were starting to grow in, at least in KL in West Malaysia, I just kept seeing this recalcitrant buffalo answering back at authority and power, of wanting to reclaim our space, our street, our power. And to me, the buffalo is powerful. 40,000 years old, the first art made by humanity, right? Claim back that power, that space, to embody it. So this is actually, this is the size of a billboard. It's 30 feet wide. So I've shown this work in many places on the side of a building. I've even shown it in China, which to me was a real score. Yeah. Reclaiming the street in China is pretty cool. So I come to Borneo Heart, you know, lovely TRC were very much involved in the exhibition that I had in KK last year. This, and then, so all of this, right, the table, the violence of admin, like, I can't sleep because of the friggin' table in my mind, right? And then I literally got sick in 2016, and that's why I came back to Sabah, because I needed to heal. And I realized that KL had become toxic for me. I love KL, don't get me wrong. I love. I was there for 20-something years, deeply embedded. KL taught me so much. But when I knew it was time to leave, it was time to leave. And I came home in a way to heal. In that process of coming home, two very, very important things happened to me. One, I rediscovered the tamu. And two, I was thinking about my grandmother's mats from old photographs. And I was thinking about the mat, the tika, and what the tika might mean in the language of the table. So the tika and the table, since the beginning of this line of thinking, have always been together. Tika Meja. This series is called Tika Meja. And I've come to realize decolonize is a very hip word now that people use all the time. But I've come to realize that to decolonize is to see the table and to see the mat. And when you see different forms of power, different forms of knowledge together, you can start to understand its relationship and its dynamics between each other. Often it is not a case of one or other. It's a dance between the two. You can't get rid of tables, but understand what kind of table you're using and what the mat is. Where is the mat in this architecture? I think of the mat as architectural. The way we're sitting together on the floor is like a tika. I'm not in a lecture. We're in this sulap, super sulap, in this environment. We're not in a lecture room with me up front and you on like chairs with little flip tables, right? Where it's a sharing in the environment. These are all architectural power structures, just how we sit and interact and share together. So Tika Meja is made by I've got the names. Is made by Malaysian and stateless Bajau and Bajau Samada Laut community in Pulau Omadal in Semporna, where I've been working since 2018. This work was made between 2018 and 2020. And it's 60 small mats to symbolize the larger tika. And it's about that relationship of power. And when you know that some of the people that made these mats don't have paper identity, they don't have a number, they don't count, then the effect of the table on their lives is a daily, whether they can get education, whether they can get medical assistance. All of that is related to their relationship with the table because they have no paper identity. But with the mat and the embedded language within the mat of the motifs and things like that, they're incredibly rich people, rich with cultural history, cultural knowledge. So it's this juxtaposition that we face every day, especially in Sabah, between powers that some people have and some people do not have. So this is the community at low tide, and this is the first big mat that we made called Tika Agaga. I'll go back first. I was invited to do a commission for the foyer of the National Gallery Singapore, which claims to be the largest art museum in the Southeast Asia region, and it claims to be the hub of Southeast Asian art. It is actively writing our Southeast Asian art history. The collection starts with colonial art. Who do we build our museums for? Who is invited to the museum? Whose culture are we talking about? What bahan are we using? What mediums are we putting into our art galleries, right? So when I got this commission to do the foyer, meaning before you pay and you go inside, everyone goes to the foyer. I've been given incredible power. I've been given the power of the foyer of the largest art gallery in the Southeast Asia region, writing our art history. What the hell am I going to do about that? You know, recognizing my extraordinary privilege and extraordinary power with this commission. Like, I got asked to do this in 2016. I'm sick. I come back to Sabah. I'm dwelling on it. What can I do that's powerful enough? How do I change the narrative? How do I use this privilege? How do I use my power? How do I claim my space? Not just for me, but for everything that I believe in, right? And for my people, Sabah, right? So I made a tika, I made a mat. It's a two-sided mat. One side is made in Semporna, the other side is made in Keningau. It's Tanah Dan Ai. Tanah Dan Ai, Tanah Ai, Sabah. It's in the foyer of the National Gallery, Singapore, biggest art gallery in the world. Borneo invented art, right? I'm going to, my power, I'm an artist, I'm going to claim it. So that's what we did. But I did it with a whole gang of people. And in order to truly, to infect the largest art gallery in Southeast Asia, I needed to bring with me the community that this mat came from. So we gate crashed like the buffalo. We gate crashed the Lepa Regatta so this is the Lepa Regatta in Semporna. See, the part of the problem when you do these elite projects like in the foyer of the gallery is that the people, the community you made it for doesn't see it. So before I put it in the museum, we gate crashed the Lepa Regatta down to the marina. The crowd carried it. We took it to the Bajau International Conference on Bajau Laut Affairs. We took it to Sabah parks. We talked about replanting pandanus along denuded coastlines. All of this is part of the circular economy because we're planting all these things that we talked about in the last thing. But what was so important, we danced on the mat. We had Kuling Tangan Orchestra on the mat. To me, we're embedding the mat with our power. The power of community that is actively engaged, presented to them, that ownership that comes with being part of something and influencing somebody else. So before it ends up in the museum, we had to take it on this journey. And that's why we gate crashed all these events to embed power into that mat. For the weavers, for the communities they come from. This is Kat Rosia. She's one of my main collaborators in the blue. And in the pink is Rosalia Muta. She's a UMS master's student who was my assistant. And this is the mat in the foyer of the National Gallery Singapore. I focus more on which is not so good of me, I suppose, focus more on the Semporna side of the mat because of the stateless talk that is coming up. But it's two-sided. So one is the colorful pandanus. The reverse is the bamboo. This is the mat in the foyer of the National Gallery Singapore. That's got Jelita. These are all the names of all the weavers who wove the mat. It wouldn't happen without them. These are the two leaders. So Kat Jelita in pink is from Keningau, weaving with bamboo pus, which is on the reverse of the mat as you see it. And that's Rosia. I was with her yesterday. We were planning our next strategies. So she's the leader of the Bajau Omadal community. And the absolute joy in installing this mat at the National Gallery Singapore. And there was a cleaner there who started crying. And that cleaner was Bajau dari Semporna with a cleaning job at the National Gallery Singapore. Oh, and she was crying because she said it's the first time she's seen her art in the museum, which was her weaving from her people. And I said to the curators, this is why we do it. This is why you have to flip the table in the museum and lift the mat. Who is the museum for? Who are the citizenry and populace of Southeast Asia? Are they these? Who do you want to come to the museum? Who is art for? Why do we make art, right? Okay, Tika ribbon video. This is in Pulau Omadal. This is the Bajau community. That's Kak Sana. She's a master weaver. And what they're carrying is a Tika ribbon. It's a very, very 62.9 meter ribbon. And it's a dictionary. It's an index of counting patterns to make up the motifs that are shared amongst Bajau communities across the region. So all of this it's a dictionary, it's an index of counting patterns, mother tongue counting patterns, rhythms for weaving mats. So we made a very long mat that stretches from Pulau Omadal, the landed community, to Kak Budi's house. You'll hear her singing in a moment, which is part of the stateless community. So we're making a cultural bridge using a ribbon mat. So Kak Budi's house is the blue one. Sounds okay. So what they're talking about, we mic'd up the women. They're just saying at this point, go straight, go to Budi's house, and then you'll hear Budi always bursts into song, and she's saying we're walking to my house with the mat the Tika ribbon that we wove. So basically, that's the entire video. Is that it makes this cultural bridge between having Malaysian identity and the stateless community and back again, and how cultural history defies geopolitics or is larger than geopolitics. That if we give power to culture is bigger, can outstretch these fences that we put up in geopolitics. All right, I wanted to include, this is Angelica Soiman's book, fantastic book on Dusun Murut motifs, which, funnily enough, if you read it, they describe what it feels like to weave a motif as opposed to describe what the motif is. So the Nantuapan is my favorite. It's also the motif that the Pakos logo comes from. But I just want to talk about this motif because I find so much power embedded in it. So if you look at the center, the very center of the motif, you see a circle. That's a tajauja with rice wine in it. Traditionally, it had rice wine in it. Then you got empat kepala. Can you see the four heads at the circle? Now, there's 2 men and 2 women. Can you see that there's 2 men and 2 women? They're not all the same. Those 4 bodies, with their heads at the center and then their bodies have come out. There's 2 men and 2 women, and they're meeting at the tajauja. When I'm working with the weavers, they tell me, oh, ini motif kita panggil Aramaiti. And kerana dia kumpul di tajauja, because they're gathered around the tajauja, so they're Aramaiti at the tajauja. And then Mami Ita, who's Egan's mom, who is my tapai master, teacher, I was asking her about what is Aramaiti? Can you tell me about Aramaiti? And she was telling me that Aramaiti is not like mabuk lupa diri. No, that is not Aramaiti. Aramaiti is group therapy, or it's a kind of therapy. She described the way I use those words. She didn't use. She said it's like this: when my sister comes to the house, she's getting divorced. She brings a small tajaja, and we sit there. She laughs, she cries, she talks about her ex-husband. It's all whatever. And at the end of that drinking session with her sister, she goes back a little bit lighter, a little bit more calm and more able to deal with the day. So this Nantuapan Aramaiti motif, which I find so much comfort in, is, in my words, not theirs, a kind of group therapy, a kind of power in communing together. It doesn't need to, in my mind, to be a tajauja. The point is for these men and women to come together and to share. And when you share, you support each other and you give each other relief. So I've used this motive a lot for these deeply, the camaraderie of coming together with community and sharing. I'm going to skip through these quite quickly. So these are some photo interpretations. This is the tiang sri of a house. Traditionally, our kampung houses had a central tiang that the house is built on, a woman tiang. So this is me discovering the mat, about how the mat changes the architecture of people coming together and meeting, how the power dynamics change. This talk is about power, how powerful the mat is. So the table, this is the haunting of a table. The table has these ghosts, but the mat also has power. So this, yeah. And these are some of the coming up is you'll see these monochromatic bamboo mats, these incredibly beautiful weavings that we've been working on that deal with all these notions of how much power is contained within our arts, our weaving. We don't notice it because oftentimes we're just making baskets for sale at the tourist market, but we're not giving power back to our mediums and how that might expand our storytelling about who we are. So this is in the Taipei Fine Art Museum, Art Histories of a Forever War, Modernism Between Space and Home. And it looks at how craft, this is a really amazing exhibition, and it looks at how craft was kind of put in its place with in the sale of craft, the selling of the exotic, the Orientalist views, all of these things. And I really love that our haunted tables entered into this exhibition to kind of claim back the power of our craft, the power of our bamboo. So in the next image is this. It's a series called the Tinukad sequence. Anyone here speak Morot, Dusun? Morot? Tinukad. So there's a basic weave in, I learn all the time. I stress through language. I wish I knew more language. But when I'm talking to the weavers, I'm always asking questions about all sorts of things. There was one very basic weave, and it just looks like a step. It's just like that, very basic. And Kak Siat said to me, oh, that is tukadkad. Tukadkad, the meaning in Morot language, meaning steps. And then in another conversation with this weaver, Julia, she was saying, yeah, and I was talking about tukadkad. She said, yeah, macam tinukadkad. Apa itu tinukadkad? Tinukadkad are the ridges at the roof of your mouth that if they get triggered by something too hot, too acidic, they become more pronounced. And I just had a like conniption fit between the roof of your mouth, between what is deeply personal and what is public, what you consume and what you might vomit out. Your mouth becomes a trigger site. So if we start sort of thinking about the anatomy of our power, what we take in and what comes out. So that sequence of weaving is called the Tinukad sequence, talking about that relationship between something deeply personal and something public, and that relationship. Okay, zooming through, I'm nearly finished. The next one is to recognize power everywhere, right? So in our mats, and the next one is of our karaoke and our songs, where we wove the most famous Orang Tanah punya lagu Sabah into a mat. So can you read it? See, what happens to Cynthia, does it happen to you? The minute you read it, power is in action, is mnemonic power, is memory power. She bursts into song. I show you a 2D image on a PowerPoint of words, and she provides the soundtrack and starts singing. What is happening? These words trigger you to instantly provide music. And you're just reading words and they become song. How powerful is that? And then not only do they become song, they are songs that locate you here in our place, right? So to me, I see power everywhere. I see power in our songs. Our songs make us know where we are, and we share it. Between friends. It's a celebration. It's powerful, but it's not. It's a celebration kind of power. Okay, Punk's video you can watch another time. And the tamu, you all know about my rantings about the tamu meeting at the marketplace. Tana dan I, the power of recognizing the compound word. Tana, the land, I, the sea, compound together, Tana, I equal homeland. For Sabah, point blank, we will never have Tana, I, we will never have our peace until the Tana dan I come together as Tana, I, right? Meaning, Tana dan I, meaning the most powerful symbol for me right now is the dan, is the and, is to conjoin people together, is to bring something and something else together. And when you come together and you share a mat, oh my God, you can do it, you're so powerful. Like, power. And my new series, sneak peek, nobody's seen yet. This is going to premiere at Art Basel, Switzerland. What is that?
What is that?
Smash the box, make a mat. Wow.
Smash the box, make a mat. Woohoo!
What happens when you take a cardboard carton box and you open it? For homeless people, it becomes a mattress. For it in places like Malaysia, where we have so much racism, and we put people in boxes, you Melayu, China, India, orang asal, indigenous, whatever, you LGBT, you male, female, you old, young, all put in your box. You are prescribed a description. You become monocrop to your box, right? So if you smash the box, if you open the box, so you don't have these labels, and you just share the mat, smash the box, share the mat, I think embedded in there is incredible power, an incredible space to make action and to influence and to share and to ampersand it. Something and something on a shared mat, get rid of the box, we take the power back. We recognize the table, we see the table, we see the matrix, we put the table in its place. It's like the rock, paper, scissors game. That this is how I can own my way of describing it. The rock is the table, the mat will give shape to the table. Or you're gonna go and punch me, my mat will cover your fist. You give shape to the table. You describe what money looks like, what money, the tool will do. You give it its nature. The mat can give the table its nature. It can give power its nature. It's what it looks like. To me, that's something that I hold on to as a form of power that is tangible and real, that can be exercised. And on that note, I think I'll end.